Think about the last time your banking app opened instantly, your work dashboard loaded, or a checkout page didn't crash right when you needed it. Somewhere, computers had to sit in a cold, powered, secure room for that to happen. Csquare is built around those rooms, and the question is simple. What would have to be true for this IPO to make sense? Csquare doesn't make the app you tap. It gives businesses a place to put the servers, network gear, and high-power machines that keep those apps running. On the cursor stocks, this is the kind of IPO story worth slowing down for, because the product sounds invisible until something goes wrong. The company was founded in May 2018 and is headquartered in Coppell, Texas. It's led by CEO Spencer Mully, who previously ran Evoke and helped build DCI data centers in Australia and Asia Pacific. That matters because this isn't a tiny team trying data centers for the first time. Here's what Csquare actually sells. A company can bring its own servers, and Csquare rents it the space, electricity, cooling, physical security, and connections to networks and cloud providers. That setup is called colocation, which really just means your computers live in someone else's professionally run building. The reason this exists is that keeping apps online is harder than it looks. Servers need steady power, backup systems, cooling, and fast connections. As AI tools, cloud services, and security needs get heavier, some companies don't want to build their own facilities. They want a landlord for serious computing. Csquare makes money in a fairly understandable way. Customers pay to use data center space, power, cooling, connectivity, and support, often because moving critical systems is painful once they're installed. So the dream is sticky revenue. If the app has to stay up, the server room has to stay paid for. Now comes the IPO, the moment a private company starts selling pieces of itself on the stock market. Csquare is set to list on the NYSE on July 16, 2026, under the ticker CSQR. The deal offers 50 million shares, priced between $23 and $27, aiming to raise about $1.35 billion. Because the final offer price is still pending, this isn't a settled number yet. But the planned raise divided by the shares offered points to an expected price around $27 a share, right at the top of the range. The full IPO valuation, the price tag on the whole business, hasn't been set yet. The headline raise is big enough to feel real. About $1.35 billion is more than Csquare's latest full-year revenue, so public investors aren't just buying today's server rooms. They're being asked to fund more capacity, more power, and a bigger role in the invisible infrastructure behind everyday apps. The company already has a real footprint. Csquare says it operates 80 data centers with more than 500 megawatts of power and over 2,000 customers. For a new investor, that means this is not a science project. The argument is about whether that footprint can become more valuable as demand rises. The bull case starts with demand. According to reporting, major data center markets have had very tight vacancy and rising rents as AI and cloud workloads fight for space and power. If your app needs more computing tomorrow than it needed yesterday, companies like Csquare can become more important without consumers ever learning their names. The second bullish point is that Csquare isn't only chasing AI hype. Its own services also speak to backup systems, disaster recovery, security, compliance, and companies trying to balance public cloud with their own equipment. That makes the story broader than one trend. Even if AI is the loudest reason investors are paying attention, there's also an energy angle. Data centers use a lot of electricity, so customers and investors care about how operators handle that pressure. Csquare says it aims for 100% carbon-free energy by 2030, a 50% cut in Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2033, and net zero emissions by 2040. That sounds powerful. But the catch is that data centers are expensive. Physical businesses. You can't download a new building. You need land, power agreements, equipment, cooling, and construction discipline. If Csquare misjudges demand or can't get enough electricity in the right markets, the app stays online story gets harder to scale. The financial reality is the cleanest reality check. In its latest full year, Csquare brought in about $987 million of revenue, which is money coming in before expenses. but it lost about $120 million, meaning the business didn't keep profit after the bills were paid. Competition is another reason this IPO won't be judged in a vacuum. If a business needs colocation, Csquare is not the only phone call. Bigger and better-known operators like Equinix and Digital Realty, plus private rivals and regional specialists, all want the same customer budgets for space, power, and connectivity. This is the part investors will argue about. With the final valuation not set, you can't say yet whether the whole company is cheap or expensive. But you can compare the planned raise to the business underneath it. Nearly $1 billion of revenue, a $120 million loss, and a public market story built on future demand. One line new investors should always check is who gets the IPO money. If cash mostly goes into the company, it can help fund growth. If insiders are selling a lot, that's a different signal. Also watch the lockup, the waiting period when early insiders usually can't sell their shares yet. After it lists, 3 signals matter more than the first day excitement. Watch whether Csquare adds and keeps customers, whether losses shrink instead of widen, and whether demand for power and space turns into signed business. The stock price may jump around, but those clues tell you whether the server room story is working. The balanced version is this. Csquare sits in a real and growing corner of the internet economy, where apps, AI, cloud systems, and backup plans all need reliable physical infrastructure. The doubt is just as real. This is capital-heavy, competitive, and still losing money. The dream and the bill arrive together. So the next time an app just works, remember, there may be a company like Csquare behind the scenes keeping the computers powered, cooled, and connected. Follow the cursor stocks, and the next big listing won't feel so confusing. This video is for information and education only, not financial advice.